The story begins with a boy falling from the sky. This boy is our protagonist, and he seems really confused about what is happening and why he is falling. As the scene shifts, we see some boys smiling and standing there. While falling, our protagonist reflects on the situation and his life. He thinks about his graduation, which he was about to complete after enduring all the bullying. Man, Korean bullying is something else. The scene shifts to a hospital where our protagonist lies on a bed, completely bandaged. It's been 3 months since the incident, and we see his grandmother arguing with a nurse. The nurse says she has never seen a patient wake up after being diagnosed as a vegetative person and advises the grandmother to give up on him. The grandmother snaps back saying, "Shut the fuck up, bitch." The scene shifts to her holding the protagonist's hand, asking him how he ended up like this and begging him to give her a sign that he is alive. The protagonist can feel her touch and hear her voice but is unable to move his body or open his eyes. The next day, his brother appears and, with a frustrated tone, says he can't hold on any longer. The same bastards who bullied the protagonist are now bullying him, and their grandmother ended up injuring herself while working. He shares how much they are suffering and angrily tells the protagonist to either die already or give him a sign that he is alive. The poor protagonist still believes this is all a dream and thinks he'll wake up soon. 3 years pass. The protagonist thinks that it has been a long time since his brother last visited him. One day, he overhears nurses discussing how his grandmother fainted. They start laughing, saying now they can watch TV on full volume. Lol, these nurses are crazy. Hearing this, the protagonist feels shocked and starts recalling the faces of everyone who were involved in his suffering. In his mind, he is furious and desperately seeks an opportunity to take vengeance and destroy those bastards. He swears to himself that if he gets just one miracle to go back in time, he will destroy every single one of them. But then he realizes it's all useless now, as he can't do anything in his current state, and he begs someone to end his life. Suddenly, he sees a vision of himself, and then, in an instant, he finds himself in his classroom. The protagonist, in shock, thinks this must be another dream. To confirm, he pulls his cheek, but it hurts. To be absolutely sure, he takes a pen and stabs his thigh. Feeling the pain, he realizes he has really returned to the past. The scene shifts to a familiar sight. We can see that this shithead beating up a nerd. The protagonist first trembles at the sight, but then he remembers everything that happened to him and swore not to repeat the same future. This moment marks the turning point for him. As the shithead beats up the nerd, our protagonist steps in and tells the bully to stop. The arrogant bastard mocks him and says, "Stay out of this, pussy." As he continues to mock the protagonist, something unexpected comes flying toward the shithead. You know what it is? Oh boy, it's starting now. When the protagonist smacked his fist on Shithead's face, everyone got afraid. Furious, Shithead was about to say something, but our protagonist wasn't going to stop there. Without giving him any time, the protagonist pulled his hair with one hand and smashed his face on the table. Scared and unaware, Shithead tried to figure out what was actually happening. Before he could react, he got another punch on the face, sending him flying, but the protagonist wasn't satisfied yet. He grabbed him and slammed him like a sack of potatoes. Our protagonist had anticipated his every single move. He didn't give him any free time to react and kicked him in the face. At this moment, our protagonist had lost it. He didn't care whether Shithead lived or died. The only thing he cared about was vengeance. Out of nowhere, a chair came flying towards the protagonist. These were the other bullies who had tormented him. They were stunned after seeing Shithead all messed up. As they inspected the situation, the big-ass dude, who claimed to be a teenager, started moving forward, saying, "I'll end your life." The protagonist knew it would be hard to defeat him in hand-to-hand combat, but he had already imagined this scenario. Just as the fight was about to start, someone from behind shouted, "Teacher is coming!" For now, they stopped fighting and left, giving deadly looks. Man, the guy on the right already looked half dead, and the big-ass dude looked like he had 2 kids. In the next scene, the class started, and Shithead was still trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. The more he thought about it, the madder he got. He glared at our protagonist, who seemed pretty chill. He kept thinking, as soon as this class ends, I'm going to kill him. On the other side, the other bullies were thinking the same as Shithead. They were confused and thought, this guy must have lost his mind. Why would anyone mess with us? What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The worst was yet to come. As soon as the teacher left the room, Shithead stood up and was about to turn around when something came flying toward him. Oh boy, it was our protagonist's kick, right in the face. Shithead fell down. Before he could react, the protagonist grabbed his hair and said, "We should continue from where we left off, right?" The protagonist wasn't even giving him time to think. Shithead kept wondering if he actually wanted to fight, even though he was getting his ass smashed by protagonist. Meanwhile, the so-called teenagers were ready to jump in, but after seeing all the commotion, they were shocked. They rushed toward the classroom, but our protagonist with a cold look told them, "You're late. Your friend already got fucked." Hearing this, the big-ass guy rushed forward, saying he would end the protagonist's life. But, as always, our protagonist had already anticipated this scenario. He grabbed a lock from a nearby locker and smashed it on the big-ass guy's head. The protagonist was so blinded by rage that he didn't care if anyone dies in this fight. The protagonist kept hitting him until he passed out and then slammed him on the ground. The other dudes were scared as hell. But, as I said before, our protagonist had anticipated every single move. Before they could react, he rushed toward them, bumping into the half-dead boy. He threw him on the ground and started punching his face. All of this happened so fast that the remaining bullies started trembling. Our protagonist finished the half-dead boy with one last blow, ensuring that boy wouldn't stand again. After this, the protagonist was tired but couldn't afford to waste a single minute. He turned toward the last guy, who was so scared he looked like he was about to piss himself. Trembling in fear, the last bully tried to process what was happening. He wondered, was the protagonist always this strong? When he looked at the protagonist again, it felt like he was staring at the devil himself. The scared bully started praying for his life. Just before the protagonist could hit him, the teacher stopped him. The bully was so relieved to hear the teacher's voice. In the office, the teacher scolded the protagonist, saying, "There are boundaries. Some of them were sent to the hospital with bloody faces." The teacher continued, "What you've done will have consequences." Before he could say more, the protagonist interrupted him, saying, "There's no need for you to overreact. It's not like this is the first incident in this school. The thing you're good at is burying cases without escalating them." Hearing this, the teacher got angry and slapped the protagonist, but it was all part of the protagonist's plan. Before the teacher could slap him again, the protagonist said, "You better stop this. If you don't, then I'll have to tell everyone that you've been receiving bribes from parents and about your affair with the English teacher." Hearing this, the cocky teacher's confidence shattered. After this, the protagonist remembers his past, where his teacher's affair was revealed, his wife divorced him, and the property belonged to his wife. The protagonist thinks, if this is true, then the teacher fears his affair being revealed the most. This blackmail has to work, and it worked. The teacher started saying, "What should I do?" The protagonist insisted the teacher remain an idle onlooker in the students' matters. "Bury them, even though you know it's wrong. Everything will remain the same, but from now on, you will do it for me." He then tells the teacher to prevent this incident from exploding by any means necessary. "If you do that, I ensure your secrets will remain between us." The teacher agreed. After this, the protagonist went to complete his incomplete objective. As we see, the blue-haired boy is bursting with anger, saying he will end the protagonist as soon as he returns. After sitting down, he starts thinking it was all just a fluke that the protagonist won against 3 people. He vows to destroy the protagonist himself, but as he's thinking about the devil appears himself. Hearing the protagonist's voice, the blue-haired boy, Young Minho, gets scared. Before he can react, he receives a solid punch to his face, making him fall to the ground. The more the protagonist pushes forward, the more terrified Minho becomes. After this, the protagonist kicks him in the face. The blue-haired boy starts yelling, "Someone, please help me." The protagonist says, "Don't expect help from anyone. No one is going to help you." In the next chapter, we see the teacher trembling. thinking about how to handle this incident, which is beyond his ability. He tries to figure out how to deal with the situation because the blue-haired boy who is being beaten belongs to a wealthy family that helps the school financially. The teacher has also taken money from them to protect their child. He is utterly screwed now. After beating the blue-haired boy to a pulp, the protagonist looks relieved. But as soon as he stops hitting him, he starts thinking about how to get out of this mess. The protagonist knows that even if the teacher tries to cover this up, it won't be much help. The scene shifts to the principal's office where the teachers are gathered. The principal says, "Have you seen the faces of the victims? They are in such a miserable state you'd only see in gangster movies." As the teachers suggest punishing the protagonist, the teacher who had the affair with the English teacher intervenes. He tells her, "Stay quiet if you don't want our affair to be revealed." Damn, how did Bro manage to get into a relationship with that baddie? Well, that aside, he convinces her to speak on the protagonist's behalf. She agrees, and the protagonist smiles like everything is going as planned. The teacher defends the protagonist, saying, "Park Min-chul runs a gang and bullies students on a normal basis. He was planning to catch them." He further states that the protagonist must have been unable to endure all that bullying and ended up doing this. "We cannot punish students like this," he concludes. The principal interrupts, saying, "Still, the punishment is inevitable. Teacher Kim Young-chul." They start shouting names. This teacher is sure taking risks. After thinking, the principal says, "We shall convene a review committee 1 week from now. The protagonist will be suspended until then." Hearing this, the protagonist smirks and leaves the office. On his way out, the teacher stops him and says he tried his best to control things. The protagonist responds, "I get it. You did your best, but it seems like you've known everything from the beginning, that Park Min-chul is bullying the students." He continues, "The only way to stop me from speaking up is to let me graduate from this school. You must do your best for my sake. If you don't, I'm going to tear apart not only your life but also teacher Lee Min-young's life." The teacher says, "Understood." The protagonist leaves in action. After this, we see the protagonist in his classroom taking his bag. He thinks about his plan to turn the tables. In the next chapter, we see him walking on the street, thinking about how long it's been since he last walked there. As he returns home, he looks for his grandma and soon realizes she would be working at this hour. The protagonist thinks he shouldn't waste the opportunity he has and needs to execute his plans. He decides he must secure the surrounding territories and establish a base before graduating. To do that, he needs to meet 3 conditions. 1. Physical strength. He needs to get stronger to fight bullies because there are far stronger people out there. 2. Alliances. He needs to form a group of people who share the same goals. 3. A strong background.
This is it for today's video. Please tell me how my narration is and suggest what I need to improve. This video took me 6 hours to make. I don't know why and how, but it took me this long to make this video. So, please subscribe for more.